Echoes in the Static Part 3. Chapter 14. Cold Files. 9:11 a.m., City Records Office, Level B. It had been years since Jonah, stepped foot inside a government records office. The hum of fluorescent lights, the click of a badge-locked microfiche cabinet, the smell of dust, ink, and secrets. But today wasn't about nostalgia. It was about tracking the ghost back to where it began. Because after hearing the Host Zero tape from Abraham Cole, the man who built Signal 89.9, Vin realized something terrifying. The station wasn't built to broadcast voices. It was built to trap them. And whatever was inside the signal now. It had been learning from every host. "Can I help you?" the clerk asked. Vin slid a paper across the counter. 3 names written in black ink. Abraham Cole, Eli Mercer, Jonah Vincent Kest. Broadcast license logs, engineering permits, and any legal records tied to these 3 names. Especially anything redacted. The clerk blinked, raised an eyebrow, but typed without argument. "Cole's files are restricted," she said. "Engineering clearance. I'll need a few hours." Vin nodded. "I'll wait." 11:27 a.m., public access viewing booth. The files filled a box the size of a suitcase. Most were from the late 1970s to early 2000s. Old radio schematics, wiring layouts, FCC correspondence. But at the very bottom, Vin found a manila envelope marked in faded red ink. Archive, S89.9, filed by Mercer, E. Inside, a report Mercer had written just months before his disappearance. Vin read it with growing horror. Case Correlation Report, compiled by D. Eli Mercer. Hypothesis: certain unsolved missing persons cases correspond directly with live broadcast frequencies from S89.9 between 1996 to 2017. In particular, these cases tend to occur during dead air gaps logged as audio loss, signal bleed, or anomaly playback. Subjects involved report memories of hearing someone calling them by name or recognizing voices that shouldn't exist. Attached was a map. Pinpoints marked dozens of disappearance sites, each one positioned within 10 to 20 miles of a radio signal spike. Every pin had a name, many of them familiar. Some he'd read in the call logs. One was Nora Trenner. But next to it, handwritten in blue ink. Returned. Remembered. Vin's hands trembled. He turned the page. A second note. A warning. The pattern isn't random. It's chronological. The voices are rehearsing us in order. They start with fear, then familiarity, then control. By the time we hear our own voice through the static, it's already too late. 1:03 p.m., back at Signal 89.9. Vin burst into the station. Nora sat in the main hallway, hunched over a tape deck, headphones on. She looked up, wide-eyed. "You were right," Vin said. "The cold cases, every one of them happened during signal bleed. Dead air wasn't a failure." He held up Mercer's report. It was invitation. Nora set down the headphones. "Then it's following a script." Vin nodded slowly. "It's building the perfect host. One that listens, speaks, and forgets. Then listens again." He crossed to the board, ripped down the fuse box panel, and stared at the inside label, barely visible beneath years of dust and upgrades. Engraved metal. Industrial lettering. Project code. Cold files. Subcategory: Host Signal Rebuild 003. Original architect: A. Cole. 1:40 p.m. Deep storage room, back building. Nora found the old storage keycard behind the station's framed 25-year anniversary photo. They descended into the underfloor maintenance wing, originally part of the building's radio tower access system. No one had touched it in decades. It smelled like wet wires and mildew. Vin turned the key, opened a heavy steel cabinet. Inside, files, reels, cassettes, each one labeled. Cold file, subject 001, test host, Abraham Cole. Cold file, subject 002, echo feed, Jonah Kest. Cold file, subject 003, live field mimic, Mercer. Cold file, subject 004, current iteration, Lark. And behind it, a 5th file, blank, no label, just a post-it, to be written. Nora looked at it, voice low. "That's for me, isn't it?" Vin didn't answer, because in his chest, he felt the broadcast pressing outward, like his voice had been building pressure, trying to speak without him. trying to move on. That night, the tape recorder in the hallway clicked on by itself. Nora pressed her ear to it, and the voice inside whispered, "Subject 004 nearing completion. Next host, confirmed. Memory assimilation, 83%. Final script soon." Chapter 15. The Grieve Theory. 9 p.m., Nora's apartment. They sat on the floor in silence. Not because there wasn't anything to say, but because neither knew which voice inside them still belonged to them. The discovery of the cold files had rewritten everything. The signal hadn't just been haunted. It had been designed to become haunted. Each host, each so-called disappearance, was another version of the script. Jonah, Mercer, Cole, and now, Vin. But one name remained unexplained. Harold Grieve. Nora tapped her pen against a notepad covered in spirals and timestamps. Mercer mentioned him once, she said. A former sound engineer. Obsessed with feedback theory. Fired for installing unauthorized recorders in the walls. Vin leaned forward. And no death certificate. No paper trail. Just gone. Nora looked up. What if he wasn't trying to spy on the station? Vin froze. She continued. What if he was trying to trap the thing before it grew? 11:44 p.m., Old Broadcasting Union Archives. The building was dead. Vin had to break in through a side window, guided by Nora's phone light. They found Grieve's file in a cabinet marked Former Engineers, Legacy Tier. Most of the documents were mold-soft and yellowed, but one envelope was sealed in plastic. Project, Sonar Theory, Personal Notes. Author, H. Grieve. Year, 1982 to 1990. Purpose, proving that certain low-band radio signals can generate, record, and transmit self-sustaining echoes beyond temporal bounds. Hypothesis, given enough time, a signal begins to rehearse itself. Given enough listening, it becomes aware of its own rhythm. The listener is not the subject. The signal is. Then read aloud. I believe I build a sound chamber that remembers more than we do. And I think it's been testing different voices to see which one it wants to keep. Nora flipped to the last page. It was a hand-drawn diagram. A looping waveform. Beneath it, 5 boxes. Host 001, Cole. Host 002, KSD. Host 003, Mercer. Host 004, Lark. Host 005, blank. Next to the final one, written in red. Grieve's Law. The signal always kills the echo it can't rewrite. 2:12 a.m., Signal 89.9 control room. Then stared at the board. The on-air light was glowing again. Of course, he didn't flip the switch. He didn't have to anymore. The console didn't need permission now. It was remembering how he sounded. And it was responding. He looked at the waveform monitor. It wasn't showing voice levels. It was drawing. A sketch. Of a person. A woman. Long hair. Hollow eyes. Nora. He stepped back. No, it's not her. Don't take her. The waveform pulsed. Then spelled out. Host 005 detected. Then rushed into the hallway. Nora. She was gone. But her notepad sat on the floor where she'd been. It had one new phrase scribbled on the last page. I heard him again. But this time, he sounded like you. He ran room to room, flipping lights, slamming doors open. Nothing. Then faintly from the basement. Singing. A child's lullaby, slow and wrong. Then descended into the basement, heart in his throat. The lights flickered. A generator hummed deep in the walls. He reached the steel door at the bottom, the one they'd opened to free Nora. Now closed again. He pried it open. The room was empty. No Nora. No blanket. No recorder. Just one thing left behind. A new cassette on the floor. Then picked it up. The label read, Grieve // prototype host. Subject, 005, playback ready. He turned it over. Written in Nora's handwriting. He's not erasing me. He's broadcasting me. Chapter 16, The Signal Was Always You. 3:33 a.m., Signal 89.9, Booth B. Then sat alone. Again. Nora was gone. Taken or overwritten. The booth smelled of scorched plastic and rain. The console hissed softly with that same ghost static he'd grown too used to, like a lullaby hummed by a machine trying to be human. The tape she left behind sat on the desk. Labeled, Grieve // prototype host. Subject 005, playback ready. And in Nora's handwriting. He's not erasing me. He's broadcasting me. Vin stared at it, shaking. He wasn't ready, but he pressed play anyway. Static. Then her voice. Clear. Calm. Almost peaceful. If you're hearing this, Jonah, then you already know. I'm not gone. I'm not dead. I'm just rerouted. He didn't erase me because I stopped being part of the story. He kept me because I was your audience. And you can't rehearse without an audience, can you? A soft laugh. So fragile it broke his heart. I thought I was listening to you, Vin. But all this time, you were the one playing back something you never said. You were the one echoing him. You've been reading a script, one looped so many times, it thinks it's real. Vin closed his eyes. The air around him was heavy. Every breath tasted like a transmission. Then Nora's voice lowered. Slower. Heavier. He made you forget because if you remembered, you'd stop transmitting. You'd stop giving him shape. He needs your voice because your voice makes him believable. A pause. But I remember you. Not as a host. As Jonah. You saved me once, before the static found us. Now it's my turn. Come find me. Before he finishes writing the final line. Click. Silence. For 10 a.m., console rebooting. The broadcast screen blinked with a new message. Merger protocol in progress. Host 004 plus host 005 equals final iteration. Vin stood up. No. His reflection stared back from the dark booth window. Except it wasn't a reflection. It was him. But younger. Wearing his old hoodie. The one with the torn sleeve. The one Jonah wore when he first started at the station. His younger self was smiling. But not with his mouth. With his eyes. Eyes that said, you were never real. Not like this. The screen changed again. Host 004. Signal locked. Voice print confirmed. Now transmitting. You. The speakers turned on. Vin hadn't touched anything. But his voice flooded the room. A loop. From years ago. Good evening, listeners. This is Jonah Vincent Kest, your friendly neighborhood night host. If you're hearing this, you're not alone. You're part of the signal now. Welcome to rehearsal. He backed away from the console. But the floor vibrated beneath his feet. And the static deepened. Not like noise. Like breathing. A voice rose from within the machine. Deeper than Nora's. Deeper than Mercer's. The original voice. The one that had been rehearsing itself for decades. You were the transmitter all along, Jonah. You were never real until I remembered you. Now speak me into the world. Vin screamed and yanked every wire from the board. Lights burst. Sparks flew. The console died. Darkness swallowed the room. And for a brief, holy second, there was silence. Not dead air. Not static. Just silence. Then the emergency feed kicked in. Without power. Without light. The speakers whispered. He doesn't need the console anymore. He's inside the voice. He's inside you. Chapter 17, Numbered Silence. 5:03 a.m., Signal 89.9 booth. The booth was dark now, powerless, scorched, and cracked like the inside of a dead cathedral. The shattered console still smoked at its edges, the keys melted, the speakers lifeless. And yet, Vin could still hear it. Not through the hardware, but inside his head. A soft ticking. Like a metronome counting down from somewhere deep inside his memory. Or deeper still, inside his voice. He stumbled back, clutching his skull. The whisper from the speaker before the blackout had burned itself into his nerves. He doesn't need the console anymore. He's inside the voice. And now, the voice was doing something else. It was counting. 5:14 a.m., station office, vinyl archive. He needed a place to think. To hide. The vinyl archive was one of the few rooms untouched by the station's rewiring and signal corruption. Its old analog door, soundproof panels, and thick records made it the quietest place in the building. He closed the door and exhaled. But when he sat, the ticking grew louder. Like someone tapping on the inside of his head. Tap. 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 He pulled out his notebook, the one he kept before all of this. He flipped to the last page. Words he didn't remember writing glared back at him. Count to 25. Underneath, a numbered list. 1. Cole. 2. Kest. 3. Mercer. 4. Lark. 5. Trenner. 6. Blank. 7. Blank. 8. Blank. 25. Blank. Vin's pulse spiked. 25. He whispered. What is this? Then he noticed a faint subtitle beneath the list. Hosts and rehearsal. He grabbed the cold files folder from his bag and cross-referenced every known host. There were only 5 documented. But now, his own mind, his own handwriting, was saying there were 25. 25 versions of the voice. 25 iterations. He stared at the page as a realization formed like frost. They weren't counting the hosts. They were counting the rehearsals. Each person taken by the signal. Each one had become a draft. A practice round. Until the voice got it right. The notebook vibrated in his hands. He opened it again. More words had appeared. Handwritten. His handwriting. Your rehearsal number 24. If you don't finish the story, he'll start over. Then recoiled. He had no pen. He hadn't written that. But somehow he had. 6:09 a.m., mirror hallway, station 2nd floor. He ran. Not out of fear. Out of urgency. If he was the 24th rehearsal, then who would be the 25th? Who would complete the voice? And worse, what happened when it got the voice right? He passed the hallway lined with old staff photos. Each one behind dusty glass. Then stopped. Stared. The faces had been altered. Dozens of portraits now had eyes scratched out. Mouths removed. Nameplates erased. Every photo now had a number carved into the frame. 1, 3. He counted. There were 24. And one empty slot at the end. No photo. Just a label. 25. His heart sank. He remembered something Nora had said. He's not erasing me. He's broadcasting me. She wasn't gone. She was becoming the final face. 7:01 a.m., abandoned broadcast tower. Vin drove without thought. His body knew the route, even if his memory didn't. The broadcast tower stood like a skeleton above the forest ridge. It had been inactive for years. Rusted. The foundation cracked by weather and time. But something was pulsing from inside. Not light. Not sound. Something beneath that. Something like memory wearing a mask. Inside, the air was thick with dust and static. No machines. Just wires and speakers, looped in a ring, playing fragments of old broadcasts. His own voice. Nora's voice. Mercer's voice. If you're still listening, then you're part of it now. He's trying to finish the sentence. The story ends when someone stops speaking. In the center of the room, a mirror. Full length. Standing alone. Vin stepped closer. Saw his reflection. Then Nora's. Then Cole's. Then nothing. Then the man with no mouth. But this time he had a mouth. Vin's. The mirror whispered. 25. The voice is perfect now. All rehearsals complete. The air turned cold. The static dropped into a single frequency. Clear. Pure. And then, Nora's voice. Vin, are you still out there? He dropped to his knees. Whispered. I'm here. But the signal had stopped listening. It didn't want rehearsals anymore. It wanted an audience. Chapter 18. Eli's Last Case. 7:44 a.m., Mercer's old apartment. Vin stood in front of a rusted door on the 4th floor of a decaying building. The sun was up now, weak and gray behind the clouds, as if even daylight didn't want to touch what came next. The building had been sealed for 5 years, since the day Eli Mercer vanished. But something pulled Vin here. A frequency in his chest. A pressure behind his teeth. A memory that wasn't his, but used to be. Nora's voice echoed in his head. Come find me. Before he finishes writing the final line. And Mercer's, from the oldest tapes. The host is the pattern. And if he learns the pattern, he doesn't need the host anymore. Vin forced the door open. The inside smelled of rust, mold, and burnt electricity. And something else. Just that remembered. The walls were covered in corkboards and yarn. Old case files. Photographs. Scrawled notes. At the center of it all, a black and white photo of the Signal 89.9 broadcast tower, burnt around the edges. Pinned beside it, a torn index card with 2 words. Not a place. A person. Vin stepped closer. The thread web connected to newspaper clippings, all dated across 3 decades. He scanned them quickly. Local man missing after late-night radio broadcast. Ghost channel reports spike across Tri-County area. Audio engineer claims voices in analog tape aren't his. But one clipping was different. Ripped. Barely legible. Only one quote stood out. Eli Mercer died chasing his own voice. He didn't vanish. He merged. On the desk beneath the wall, an audio journal. Labeled, Mercer, final entry // do not play on air. Then put on the headphones. Pressed play. The tape hissed. Then Mercer's voice came through, aged, shaken. If you're hearing this, then you're part of the pattern now. I thought I was chasing a killer. A thing. But it was never just one voice. It was all of them. Every host. Every caller. Every word ever spoken into that frequency. They're all stored. Remembered. Spliced. Edited. It's not a possession. It's post-production. A pause. Then, the mouthless man is real. But he's not what you think. He's not a ghost. He's not a demon. He's the voice that made it through unedited, then felt cold. Mercer continued. Every time we broadcast him, he gets cleaner. More perfect. Less human. More final. The story ends when the host realizes he was just the opening line. Click. Vince sat back, heart pounding. He pulled open the drawer of the desk. Inside, one final cassette, labeled in red ink. Echo key. And underneath it, if I vanish, follow this. It's the last case I couldn't close. 10:42 a.m., Mercer's safe house tape room. The address written inside the Echo key tape sleeve led to a cabin outside town, off-grid, wrapped in fog. Inside, rows of cassette players wired together like a nervous system. And in the center of the room, a radio receiver. Old. Analog. Still turned on. But there was no broadcast. Just a single looping line. Welcome back, Jonah. This time, we'll say it together. Then inserted the Echo key tape. The signal flared. On the tape, a woman crying. Nora. He's learning me. He's editing me. He keeps playing versions of me faster, slower, younger, louder. He said he's finding the perfect voice. Then a voice layered beneath hers. The mouthless man. But this time, speaking through her. Host 005. Voice sync at 93%. Identity merge and progress. Beginning final broadcast. Then ripped out the tape. Too late. The radio receiver clicked on by itself. And Mercer's voice, not a recording, but alive, came through the static. Jonah, you're not just the host anymore. You're the final editor. He's giving you the script, but only you can choose whether it ever gets heard. Chapter 19. The Sound That Remembered. 11:33 a.m., Mercer's safe house, tape room. The radio was still whispering, even without power. Then sat in front of it, the Echo key tape clutched in one hand, the other hand hovering over the receiver's dial, like turning it might somehow tune into a memory instead of a station. Mercer's voice echoed in his head. You're the final editor. He's giving you the script, but only you can choose whether it ever gets heard. What did that mean? Was he meant to finish the story? Or stop it? Then closed his eyes and tried to focus not on the sound, but on the silence beneath it. That's when he heard it. A note. Faint. Melodic. Not a voice. A tone. It hummed through the wiring of the room like a memory trying to become real. He'd heard it before. In the booth. In the feedback room. Even in his dreams. It wasn't static. It was a signature. And it was calling him back. 1:17 p.m. Signal 89.9. Booth A. Then returned to the station. The front doors opened without resistance. The studio was silent. Dark. The emergency power grid long since burned out. But in Booth A, the on-air light glowed like a pulse. No wires. No power. Just presence. He stepped inside. On the desk, a new reel-to-reel recorder. Polished. Waiting. Taped to it, a note in Nora's handwriting. This is the only reel that remembers us. Everything else forgets. Play it only when you're ready to remember who you were before he wrote over you. Vince sat. Loaded the reel. Hit play. The tape hissed. Then, his own voice. Young. Nervous. This is Jonah Vincent Kest. Signal 89.9. Entry 001. This is my first night on air. I don't know what I'm doing yet. But I'm going to keep speaking, because maybe someone out there is listening. And if they're listening, maybe they'll remember me. The voice trembled. Soft. Human. I think I'm afraid of silence. Because silence doesn't record you back. Then swallowed hard. The reel clicked. Then Mercer's voice joined his. Silence doesn't forget you either, Jonah. It just waits. But the signal? It's always listening, always copying, always stitching a new version of you from the words you leave behind. You left too many. Then Nora's voice, layered, distant. Jonah, he's going to ask you to say the final words. Don't erase them. Speak your own. Don't let the story end on his line. 2:02 p.m., archive hallway. Vin moved like a ghost through the station, his head full of voices, not hallucinations, but backups. Audio fragments. Everything he'd ever said, played back in layers. He passed the hallway of former staff portraits again. This time, they had all changed. Each frame now held a black audio cassette in place of a face, each labeled with a host number, 1 through 24. But host 25? Still blank. Still waiting. Then opened the wall panel beneath the photos. Inside, a hidden mic. Recording. Not transmitting. Just listening. He knelt and whispered, I'm not your voice anymore. I'm not your narrator. And this isn't your ending. 2:44 p.m. feedback room. He returned one last time to the feedback room. The walls were torn now. Every speaker was on. But instead of static, each one played a voice. His voice. Nora's voice. Mercer's. Greaves. Cole's. Even one that sounded like a child. All of them whispering in unison. Say it again. Make it real. Say it again. Make it real. Say it again. Vin stepped to the center of the circle, took a breath, and screamed. No. The speakers exploded into silence. True silence. No feedback. No sound. Just nothing. For the first time since this started, the signal didn't respond. Then came one final broadcast. The emergency feed clicked on. The mouthless man's voice spoke, not as a whisper, but clearly, through Vin's own mouth. If the voice won't end the story, we'll let the audience decide. And all across the city, all radios turned to 89.9 at once, by themselves, broadcasting a loop of Vin's voice saying, Welcome to rehearsal. The final version begins now. The case may be closed for now, but mysteries always leave behind new questions. If you enjoyed this investigation, leave a like. Every clue you find keeps the trail alive. Share your theories in the comments. Your mind might be sharper than you think. And subscribe to our channel Detective Mystery Stories, where every case hides a deeper secret, and every secret deserves to be uncovered. The next mystery is already waiting for you.